Yes, Mr. Millett.
Mr. Chairman, can I call our next witness, please? Control Room Officer Sharon Darby.
Yes, thank you.
Sincerely and truly declare and affirm that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Thank you very much. Now, you'd like to give your evidence sitting down, would you?
Yes, please.
Right, well, make yourself comfortable.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Millett's going to ask you some questions. Yes, Mr. Millett.
Good afternoon, Miss Darby.
Good afternoon.
Can I just start by asking you to give us your full name, please?
Sharon Angela Darby.
Can I start also by saying thank you very much for attending the inquiry to give evidence to us. It does help us enormously with our investigations, and we're very grateful to you. My questions are supposed to be short and simple. They don't always turn out that way. So if you don't understand it, a particular question, or you want me to repeat it, I'm very happy to do so, or to put the question in a different way. If you need a break at any stage, just let us know, and we can take a break. Okay? Now, can I start with your statement? Now, you should have in front of you, but don't, a copy in paper form of your statement. So we're going to work on the screen, and on the desk in front of you on your right, you've got a monitor which will have your statement on it.
Got my glasses.
Can you just look at that? It's dated the 23rd of October, 2017, and its reference number is MET 000139661. Have you read it recently?
Sorry?
Have you read it recently?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Can you confirm for us that the contents are true?
Yes.
Have you discussed your statement or your evidence with anybody before coming here today?
No.
Okay. Can I start by asking you a few questions about your role and career in your training?
Yep.
You're a control room officer with the LFB.
Yes.
And when you wrote your witness statement, you said that you had 13 years' experience as at October 2017.
Yes.
Have you always worked in the control room?
Yes.
And can you give us an idea of what training you've had to be a control room officer?
Well, initially when you start the job, you have, I think we had 6 to 8 weeks training, which covers the whole role. And then after that, we have different types of training. Some of it might be online, and some of it's with the training team. The FSG training is biannually, and the training, even though I've said on my statement we have quite a lot of training, my last FSG training was 2013. In 2015 we had a new system, and so that sort of overtook a lot of the other training.
Right. Who, in the 2 or 3 years leading up to the Grenfell Tower fire in June 2017, gave you that training? Who delivered the training?
Our training department, I believe.
Right.
Yeah, so we've got a couple of people who are dedicated to training, and they would have done that. They would give it's a presentation. Right.
And how long before the night of the Grenfell Tower fire was your last training session?
2013.
2013?
Yeah.
13?
13, yeah.
Right. Have you ever had any training regarding dealing with multiple FSG calls?
No.
In your training to deal with FSG calls, what was the number of FSG calls that you were trained to handle? 1.
Yeah.
Right. Are you familiar, from your training, with policy 790, fire survival guidance?
I do not know what that policy is. I don't know the number. Is it fire survival guidance?
Yes.
I'm aware of it.
Right.
I wouldn't know it the policy word for word, but I'm aware of it.
Okay. Have you been trained on its...
The training would be in accordance with that policy.
Okay. And what about policy 539, which is emergency call management?
Again, I would be aware of the policy, and again, that is probably part of our initial training.
Right. Did you ever get any...
You get updates.
You did get updates?
You can, yeah, but a lot of the updates are online or by email.
How often did you get those updates?
When the policies might have a slight alteration.
I see. Apart from that, did you get refresher training on FSG calls?
It was 2013 was the last.
One. Were you yourself involved in handling calls for a fire at Lakanal House in South London in 2009?
No.
Have you had any training specifically about the lessons learnt from the Lakanal House fire?
Well, I believe that we did have fire survival training after Lakanal House, and I believe it might have slightly changed from the lessons from Lakanal House.
Okay.
But I don't know. Obviously, Lakanal House was in 2009, so it's quite a long time ago, so I'm not quite sure about the differences, but I know that we had more training after Lakanal House.
Okay. Did you ever receive training as a control room staff member in relation to understanding operational issues at high-rise buildings?
No.
Did you ever get any training on understanding engineered solutions?
No.
Did you get training in relation to how to capture relevant information from 999 callers and then pass that to operational firefighters?
Yes, as part of the fire survival guidance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You did? You got that training?
Well, fire survival guidance would include obtaining information to pass to the crew.
Yes. And was the last training that you got on that, capturing relevant information and passing it to operational fire crews, was that also 2013, or was there training later than that?
No, 2013.
13. Does your training, or has your training ever involved how to deal with persons who don't have English as their first language?
No.
Does your training, or has your training ever involved dealing with persons who come from different cultures, ethnic minority cultures?
No, the training doesn't involve that. The initial training, we have you can get an interpreter on the system, but obviously there's quite a process to get an interpreter on the telephone, but apart from if a person can't speak English, but apart from that, it's nothing specific from training for that.
No. In your experience, have you ever had to call on the services of an interpreter? Once. Yeah,
years ago.
Right. What was do you remember what the language was?
I can't, I'm afraid. I don't remember.
Right. How easily available are interpreters to the control room staff?
It's not an easy process. You have to. If I needed an interpreter, I would ask the officer of the watch that I needed one, and they would get someone on the telephone, or you can try and make a conference call, if you like, with an interpreter. Right. But it's not an easy process.
No. I mean, do you know...
And that's if you can get one with that language.
Do you know where they come from, these interpreters? Who supplies them?
No.
Do you know how many languages are available?
No.
Okay. Did you ever have any training on clarifying with callers as to whether they or people in their house or flat have any kind of disabilities or mobility issues?
That would be part of the questions that we would ask. So as part of the question. Obviously, with training, there's a number of questions to try and get from the caller.
Yeah.
Some information, so that might be one of the questions that we would ask.
Right. You say it might be one of the questions.
Yeah.
Would it be one of the questions you would ask as a matter of course?
I'm not sure if it's in the... I don't know. There would be a line of things that you would ask the caller, and I guess if you would ask them if there's anyone else in the property with them and where they are, and it would lead from that if they have any mobility issues.
Now, in your statement, if I can just go to it, on page 3, in paragraph 2, you say, that, and this is really halfway down, if I can just direct your attention to that. The handling of an FSG call. Well, I'll start at the beginning. The night of the Grenfell Tower fire, there was a huge amount of fire survival guidance calls. An FSG is essentially when a caller tells us that they cannot get out of a property. This could be down to a variety of reasons, but most commonly due to fire or smoke. I'm just pausing there. Could you just explain your understanding of at what point a call becomes an FSG call?
If they are being affected by fire or smoke, then you would say, obviously, ask them to leave the property. And at that point, they would say, I can't leave the property. And you ask them why they can't leave the property. And it could be because they have a disability. It could be that there's more fire and smoke outside their property. Right. So that's when you start the fire survival guidance of trying to keep them safe and give them help, direction of what to do next.
Right. Okay. So any call which is a call where the caller can leave safely is this right? Is not a fire survival guidance call in your understanding?
No, the fire survival guidance is if they cannot leave the property.
Yeah. Now, on page 3 in the third paragraph, you say in the last sentence, in my 13-year service, I've had a few FSGs, but not many. They are not very common, to be honest.
No.
How many FSG calls have you had in your career, do you think?
I don't know the number, but it's probably a handful.
Right. And have you ever experienced any multiple FSG calls?
No.
Do you know of colleagues who have had to handle multiple FSG calls?
I know of colleagues that have.
Right.
And obviously for Lacanau House.
Is it common?
No, it's not common.
When you're advising an FSG caller who is not able to leave their premises due to the effects of fire, heat or smoke, would you expect to have information in your hands from the incident ground about the conditions in the building, as well as information from the caller?
When you've got a fire survival guidance going on, that's usually while the crews are actually making their way to the property. And then, because normally, obviously the crews would arrive, we would be telling the crews where that caller is in the property, and they go straight to them. So it's not, and the information might come after they've actually rescued that person.
Okay.
So the priority is to get to that person and get them out.
Right. When you are advising an FSG caller, would you get information about the conditions in the escape route?
Sorry, I don't quite understand.
Well, if somebody calls up and says,
Yes.
I'm trapped,
Yes.
I can't get out,
Yes.
would you ask the caller to tell you about what the conditions in the escape route are, or would you not go there?
Yes, because you would say, why can't you get out? And they
Right.
would tell you they can't because the escape route is smoke-filled or there's fire out there.
Yeah.
So you're getting information from the caller,
Right.
trying to assess advice.
Okay. And if the firefighters were on site, on the incident ground,
If they were... sorry.
if they were on the incident ground
Yes.
at the time that an FSG call was going on, would you
Yes.
expect to have information from the incident ground about how near the firefighters were to the FSG caller?
Possibly. It's, like I said earlier, the priority is to get to that caller before messages come back. They might, obviously, because we are relaying the information to them of where that person is. So the priority is for them to go to that person.
Yes.
And then they might make it, give us information once they've... But obviously the priority is to get to the person first.
Now, do you remember that as part of the advice that you give an FSG caller, you are required to reassure the caller and keep reassessing their situation?
Yes.
Would it be normal to reassure the caller by reference to how near the firefighters are to them?
Yes.
And in order to know how near the firefighters are to the FSG caller, who would you be dependent on for that information?
Well, the radio operator might be asking them how close they are. On our map system, we now have a tool on there where you can sort of see the location of where the appliance is moving.
Right.
So that's really. We can ask them how far away they are, but we would. I mean, in London, you expect an appliance to sort of get to an incident within sort of 10 minutes, anyway. So.
Right. And where the firefighters are on the incident ground already, and you've got an ongoing fire survival guidance call, who would you expect, or who would you expect anyone in the control room to speak to on the incident ground to get the information about how close the crews are to the FSG caller?
The radio operator is the person that speaks to the fire crew.
Right.
In the control room.
Who is it who the radio operator speaks to at the incident ground?
Well, it will be there will be someone on the appliance who is responsible for sending the radio messages. So the messages might come from the watch manager, for example, but it might not be the watch manager you're actually speaking to, because he'll obviously be dealing with the incident.
Right. If you go to page 3 of your statement, or stay on page 3 and look at the third paragraph, you say, generally speaking, the advice, however, around any fire in the first instance, will be to get out if safe to do so. It's only when the caller says that they are unable to get out will the FSG kick in, and we tell them to remain and follow the guidance.
That is more around a house, though, and a bit.
Right.
For a high-rise, it's slightly different, but for a house, if someone's in a house or in a low-level building, the advice would be to get out straight away.
If you've got an FSG call, which, as you've said before, by definition was where they were trapped and couldn't get out,
Yes.
what would be the purpose of telling them to remain?
What would, sorry, be the
What would be the
purpose?
purpose of telling them to stay where they are?
Well, they can't, if they can't leave because it's dangerous to leave, or they're unable to leave for some reason, then obviously you need to keep them safe in the, or try and help them to remain safe in the property.
Right. In your, and it's maybe just the language of the statement here, but you say it's only when the caller says they are unable to get out will the FSG kick in, and we tell them to remain. And my question was, why would you tell them to remain if they were already stuck?
Well, it's not worded greatly, but obviously if they can't get out, they've got no choice but to remain, have they?
Exactly.
So it's actually just helping them and reassuring them because they have to remain.
Okay. Can I then just see if we can clear this away, because there may be a misunderstanding. On page 6 of your statement, you talk about the stay put policy, and this is in the 4th line from the top of the page. And you say a stay put policy is a directive from the Home Office and exactly what we've been told to give as advice in these circumstances. And then you say, as I stated earlier, the stay put policy is in place for high-rise buildings in the event that callers are unable to get safely out of their property. And again, I just want to ask you, why would you be telling people to stay put if callers are unable to get safely out of their property?
We call it the stay put policy. That's, but obviously, it wouldn't be. You would be trying to help people if they can't get out of a building. They're not going to go. If they're scared, if they're saying I can't get out because there's a fire outside my flat, then obviously. For a high, or if it doesn't affect their flat, then obviously for a high-rise, the advice is that they might be safer to stay inside their flat. In normal circumstances, it should be a contained, fireproof space.
Yes.
So that you're not sending them out to more danger.
Yes. But if they're already trapped and on the other end of an FSG call, then is it right that actually stay put advice has no place? Because you can't tell people to stay put if
no,
they're,
it's just a phrase, isn't it? The stay put policy. Obviously, if people can't get out, and then you've got to help them while they're staying.
Right.
But then, for a high rise, it might be that they're not being affected. If they're not being affected by the smoke and the fire, it would be safer for them to stay inside the flat.
Okay. At what point, when a caller calls, do you take the step of trying to identify a safe alternative escape route?
When a caller calls, are you talking about high rise?
Let's go with a high rise. Yes, that's.
So, if a caller's saying that there's a fire in the building, there's smoke that's coming in or whatever. Obviously, if they say they can't get out because there's smoke outside, you've got to go by what the caller says to you and try and assess and give, just help them with. You're getting information from the caller. We can't see what they're seeing, so it's trying for them to say there's smoke out there. I can't go out there.
What if a caller rings up and says, "Well, I'm not trapped at the moment, but I don't want to stay because I'm frightened and I can see smoke coming up the building or fire coming up the building. I'm not trapped at the moment." If that happens, what advice do you give?
If someone's frightened and they want to leave, then they must leave. But I can only go by what I'm trained and the policy that we're trained with, which, it might be safer for them to stay in their flat if it's not affected.
And are you trained to try to help them identify a safe alternative escape route?
Well, yes, if they're saying that I can get out, I can go down the stairs, I can get out, then they should do that.
Yes.
If he can't, then obviously you've got to the fire survival guidance.
Yes.
Sorry.
Really, what I'm asking is whether there's a stage before fire survival guidance to a trapped person where the advice is given to a person who isn't or doesn't think they're trapped and wants to get out, but needs help assessing whether or not it's safe for them to go through the escape route. Can you just help us with what advice you give the caller in that situation?
Sorry, you're going to have to... I'm
Yes.
getting a bit...
Yes.
Sorry, could
An
you
example of
repeat?
one of the questions I promised you I'd ask. Is there where you've got a call that comes in and the caller says, "I'm not trapped. I can leave. I'm mobile and I can leave. I'm not stuck because although I can see a little bit of smoke outside my door, I think I can get through it. But I'm very worried about staying." Do you give that caller advice about how to get through the escape route?
Probably not. I mean, if they said they can leave, then I would say to them, okay, if you can leave safely, go.
I see. So does that mean that, in fact, the assessment...
And you want to go, then go, yeah.
Does that mean that the assessment of the safety of the escape route is left to the caller?
Well, they might want to stay on the phone with you,
Right.
which is absolutely fine.
Yeah.
We would do that. We might say, do you want me to stay on the line with you while you go down the stairs? And we can do that.
Now, can I just ask you to look, or be shown, policy 790, which is fire survival guidance calls. And I want to show you Appendix, page 3. And can I start with paragraph 5.5? If you're not familiar with this, Ms. Darby, please tell me. But this is paragraph 5.5 of policy number 790. And it says, control will attempt to gather all the information on the control information form, see Appendix 2, and relay this information to the incident as and when it becomes available. And then you'll see there's a list of things that control should gather. My first question is, in your experience, is this information always, or routinely at least, recorded on a control information form in the control room?
It's probably more recorded on the log with so that the information can be passed over to the fire crews. I've never actually used a control information form.
Right. Okay. Have you observed your colleagues in the control room using control information forms?
No, because that's, like I said earlier, fire survival guidance isn't that common, and certainly when we have multiple of them, we weren't filling in the form. I don't remember if they were actually on the desks at Stratford.
Right. Just to be absolutely clear about what I'm asking you about, if you just be shown Appendix 2 to this document, that there is a control information form. Are you familiar with that as a form, at least?
I have seen it, yes.
Right. In what context?
Well, it's on you.
Apart from being tacked on the back of the policy.
It's we have got some forms on the desks, some at Merton.
You do?
Yeah.
Right. Do you ever use them?
I've never used one.
Right. Do you have them, or did you have them at Stratford?
I don't remember seeing them.
And going back to the shopping list, if we can, Mr. Documents Director, at paragraph 5.5, you can see a list of 8 detailed pieces of information that you've got to collect. In your experience, is this information always obtained?
Yes, we certainly find, obviously, number of the house and flat, number of persons, the location, the conditions, their proximity to the fire. So yes, that we would get as much of that information as we can.
And when it says time updated, what do you understand by that? Do you have an understanding about what that means?
I don't know actually what that bit means. Time of the FSG call, maybe. I don't know. Okay. I don't want to.
I mean, I know you've only handled a handful in your experience. Perhaps this is slightly unfair, but in that experience, do you remember updating FSG calls, updating callers, or updating fire crews?
Yes, but that, like I say, would be done. Just updating the crews of where the caller is and the condition, right. You know, how it's progressing, and obviously letting the caller know that the crews are close and and when we'll tell them they're arriving now. Yes. You know, someone's coming to you.
Okay. And in your experience, would you be able to update the caller by calling them back to tell them fresh information?
We wouldn't do that. No. Especially on a landline or anything like that. No.
No, but people nowadays use mobiles.
We wouldn't call. We wouldn't let. No, we don't call them back.
That's a matter of practice and custom, is it?
The thing is, if you're doing a fire survival call, you're not going to let the caller hang up until for one call. When there's one call going on, you keep the caller on the line till the fire crews have got there.
Right.
But for multiple, it's obviously would be slightly different.
Yes. I see what you're saying. So you say slightly different. Well, could you just expand on that? Or how different?
Can you repeat the question? Sorry,
yes. It's really this question of updating. I can understand how you might update the fire crews about new information you're getting.
About ringing back. Yeah, we wouldn't ring a caller back.
No. Okay. But I think you said you'd actually, with a normal fire survival guidance call, you wouldn't let them go in the first place. So you'd always keep them on the line.
No, that's right.
So that then leads to the question, well, what happens where there are multiple FSG calls? And I know you've got quite limited experience of those, but would you always be able to keep them on the line?
Well, I wasn't taking fire survival guidance calls that night.
No, okay.
So I can't really comment about that, but I don't think it was possible to keep everybody on the line because of the amount of calls that were coming in.
Right. Now, just looking at 5.5, it requires control to relay this information to the incident as and when it becomes available, as we can see. Can I just confirm how that information gets passed to the incident ground?
Via the radio.
Via the radio. Now, can you just tell us which channel is that?
There's
Normally.
2 channels.
Right.
2 channels of the radio. We have the South channel, which is channel 2, and the north of the river, if you like, for channel 4.
Right. And if you just turn or look at the bottom of the page, it says if, underlined, control has sufficient resources, then MF2H FLONOPS 1 could be used to free up the main scheme fire-link radio if there are a large number of FSG calls. Have you yourself had experience of using FLONOPS?
FLONOPS is the radio channels that we use, but FLONOPS 1 is like a spare. So we're using FLONOPS 2 and FLONOPS 4 all the time, but FLONOPS 1 is a spare channel.
Okay. And this is a question I've been asking myself for a week or two. Does FLONOPS stand for Fire London Operations?
Yeah.
Okay. And 01 is a spare, you say?
Yes.
You're using... So FLONOPS is just another word for channel. So channel 4, RT4, FLONOPS 4, it's interchangeable. I see.
Exactly.
And how would use of FLONOPS 1 free up the main scheme filing radio?
Well, if you've got enough staff, you could have a dedicated channel just to pass the fire survival calls, if you've got enough staff on to do that.
Right. Just on the question of numbers of staff, I think you say in your statement that the normal complement during a shift is 11 in the control room.
Yes, that's the minimum number.
That's the minimum number?
Yeah.
In your experience, has it ever gone below that?
It has done, yes.
Does it sometimes go above that?
Yes, yes.
Right. What's the maximum number of staff members you've ever worked with in a control room on a shift?
I'm not entirely sure. 14, 15,
Okay.
16.
Right.
On one watch, that is, sorry, because in the daytime, obviously this was at night, but in the daytime you might have two watches. You have two watches overlapping.
Yes. Okay. I'll come back to the question of whether enough staff could have created a dedicated line, radio link, shortly. But just focusing on the question of passing the information to the incident ground, which is what we're looking at, which is paragraph 5.5 of policy 790. Who would the control room pass that information to in the first place?
In the first place, it will be the pump ladder who has got the watch manager on it. He's in charge initially, so it would be to the pump ladder who's got the watch manager.
Yeah,
that's
the incident command.
So yes.
Okay. And once a command unit arrives, what happens then?
The command unit will take over the radio traffic.
Right, I see. And who makes and communicates to you the decision to send radio messages about FSG calls to the CU, the command unit, instead of the incident command pump?
Sorry,
who makes that decision?
Who makes what decision?
Who makes the decision to send radio messages about FSG calls to the command unit as opposed to the incident command pump?
Who makes the decision? Well, the command unit takes over. So when that command unit, so the radio operator would know that the command unit is taken over, and to send direct then the calls to the command unit.
Okay. So in essence, it's the radio operator who knows to send it to the CU instead of the ICP?
Yes.
Okay. If you get... Well, let me just show you the paragraph, to be fair to you. Paragraph 510, in the event that control gets no response from the ICP, they will contact an appliance en route and pass the FSG information to them. The completed form must be passed to the IC on arrival and a copy retained at the ICP. Now, do you know why control are required to pass the information to an appliance which is en route rather than a different appliance already at the incident ground?
If you can't raise, to be honest with you, if you can't raise the appliance who is in attendance with the watch manager on it, then you might try one of the other appliances in attendance. But they're probably not going to respond to you because obviously they're dealing with the fire. So the appliance en route is they're also monitoring the radio, so they can hear you. And so to pass the information to the appliance en route is to just ensure that the information is passed and does get to the incident commander.
In your experience and in your knowledge from your training, would it not be normal for one member of the firefighting operational crew to stay with the pump and listen to messages coming through on the main scheme radio?
That's how it normally works.
Right. Okay. If you look back at 5.9, paragraph 5.9 of the policy, it says all FSG call information must be passed to the IC, who will decide what action should be taken. In your experience and on your training, is it your understanding that That means all the information that was gathered in that long shopping list we looked at.
Yes.
Right.
That's right. All the information that we have gathered will be passed over to the incident commander.
Okay. And when a command unit is in place on the incident ground,
Yes.
would you normally leave it to the command unit to pass that information to the incident commander?
Yes, it's the command unit will take over that responsibility.
Right.
Excuse me, can I ask you, how does the radio operator in the control room
Yes.
know that the command unit has taken over? Do you get a message from the command unit?
Exactly. He will come up on the radio and tell me he's now in charge, or he's taken over as such, yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ms. Darby, we've been going, I'm very conscious, for 45 minutes. Would you like to take a break now? Or we can go on for a little bit if you're feeling up to it.
Yes, please, if that's all
break.
right. Thank you.
You'd like a
Mr.
break?
Chairman,
Yes, all
may-
right.
Thank you.
Yes, we can have a break now. Should we say 3:05? Gives you 10 minutes to...
Yeah. Oh, just 5 minutes is fine. Just for a little.
All right, well, we'll try 3 o'clock then.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Can I ask you not to talk about your evidence, please, to anyone while you're out of the room? Right, and now you go with the usher, and then we'll continue in just over 5 minutes. Right, then we'll resume at 3 o'clock, please. Right, Ms. Darby, happy to carry on?
Yes.
Good, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Darby, for coming back to us. Can I just ask you a couple of follow-up questions? First of all, I asked you some questions earlier on about asking callers about whether they have mobility issues or whether they're elderly or children or things like that. And you said that it would be one of the questions you would ask, and so it was part of policy. Can I just put it to you that, in fact, there's no written policy we've been able to find in the LFB policies which say that control room staff handling FSG calls or emergency calls, particularly FSG calls, should find out about, for example, mobility issues. So when you say it was one of the questions you would ask, is that because you were trained to ask anyway, or it's a matter of practice?
Probably from the training.
Right.
Like I say, if you ask a caller to go to another room to get furthest away from the fire or wherever the fire or the smoke is, and obviously they're going to tell you if
Right.
they can't because they've got mobility issues, and a caller will generally give you that information anyway.
Right. Would you normally, as a matter of practice, ask whether there are any children in the house or flat where you are
yes,
handling FSG?
I think you would ask and you would ask if there's anyone else with them.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what about elderly people? Would you ask about that?
Not particularly specifically elderly, but obviously you would ask the caller if there's anyone else in the flat or the building with them in there as well.
We also discussed this question of ringing back just before the break, and you said normally you wouldn't need to because they'd be they'd stay on the line.
Yeah.
What would happen if your call got cut off during an FSG call?
If it was on a landline, we wouldn't ring back.
Right.
Because you could be wherever the phone might be, you could put them in more danger. It's not practice to ring a caller back.
No, you said.
But I can't really answer that. I think if they're on a mobile, I probably would attempt to call them back if I have one call going on at the fire. You know,
Okay.
if it was one call I was dealing with.
Now, going back, if I can, to policy 539, at page 17, under the words general, this is policy 539, tab 3 of our policies bundle. This is emergency call management,
Okay.
which, and this is Appendix 3, it's the second page of Appendix 3, and I just want to ask you one or two questions about this. It says, general, other control room officers and supervisory staff will assist the CRO in carrying out the fire survival guidance call by ensuring all relevant information regarding the caller's situation is passed via both the airwave radio and via telephone when a command unit is in attendance.
Okay.
Do you know why it requires the information to be sent via both radio and telephone when a CU is present?
No. That would maybe a supervisor would ring the command unit
Right.
when he's in attendance, and I'm not a supervisor. From my point of view, it would be the other control room officers and supervisory staff. If you've got one fire survival guidance going on, obviously will assist in that. You might need an ambulance, so someone else will call the ambulance. Someone else will be telling the radio operator, updating the radio operator.
Right.
But for the command unit, for the telephone with the command unit, that might be more of the officer of the watch that would do that.
I see. Which telephone would be used in the control room to contact the command unit?
One that's on the officer of the watch is
that on the head?
I don't know if that's a handheld or on the X system. I'm not sure.
Okay. Is it a solid telephone on the head table?
There is, but I think that whether that's for special purposes, I'm not sure.
Okay. Does this, in your experience, I mean, we can read the text for ourselves, but in your experience of FSG calls, does that result in there being a set of, or pair of parallel lines of communication between the control room and the incident ground, one by radio and one by telephone?
For a control officer, it's the radio. So if it's by telephone, that's a supervisor's role, which is not I'm not a supervisor, so I can't.
Okay. Would you expect the same information to be passed by the supervisor by telephone and by the radio operator by radio to the incident ground, to the command unit?
Yes, it should all the information that we've got should be going over the radio.
Right.
So yes, I'm not.
And in your experience, would you, if you were on the radio and the supervisor was on the telephone, would you speak to the same person in the command unit or different people in the command unit?
Probably. Well, it would have to be different. I wouldn't be able to be on the phone and on the radio.
So do you think it contemplates simultaneous messages being sent, phone and radio?
Yeah, I would have thought they'd be different people.
Right. Would the control room keep track of the information given on the radio and on the telephone in order to ensure that the messages were consistent?
Well, the information should be going on the log. So you'll passing the information. When you're taking fire survival guidance and that, you're typing in a lot of the information. So that's going on to the log, so
right.
The radio operator can pass that information.
I see. So just so I'm clear, you've got the information about the FSG on the log, and that's inputted by
the call taker.
The call taker, and then the radio operator. Is this right? It has sight of the log, and then passes that information to the CU.
Yeah. What we have is the procedure for that is a service request.
Yes.
Which is like a message box. The call operator who's taken the details, will open up this service request box, which is like message information. We'll input the details. So that message will have the incident number on it. And if that person's opened up the incident, it will automatically be attached to that message box.
Right.
And the information, they will type information for the radio operator to pass over. So they will save that message box. The message box will, we have a list, which everyone in the control room can see, of service requests. And it will say on there for RT4, for example, and the RT4 operator will open that box and relay that information.
Okay. And would the supervisor also have access to the log and give the same information by telephone to the CU?
I don't know what the supervisor will pass.
Right. Can I go back to, I'm sorry to jump around these policies, but back to policy 790 if I can. And I just want to show you two things in here. First of all, if I can ask you to look at paragraph 7.5. It says the command support system, CSS, has a messages screen that records messages sent to and from the incident ground once the CU has been mobilised. Messages sent by Firelink radio relating to FSG calls are recorded here. And then it goes on to say, there is a conferencing facility on CSS which is available for remote users. Control has CSS access, and sensitive information relating to specific calls can be communicated by this method.
I think that's a supervisor that has access to that.
Right.
I'm not really familiar with
my first question.
CSS.
Okay. Are you familiar with the CSS system?
No.
You're not. Can I then ask you to look at paragraph 9 of the same policy on the next page, which is communication with control, and just draw your attention to paragraph 9.1. It is vital that control is kept informed of the actions being taken to resolve each FSG call. The fact that control is aware of the actions being carried out on the incident ground will greatly enhance the advice given to FSG callers. As a control room operator, what information would you expect normally to receive from the incident ground about an FSG call?
That they've reached the person.
Apart from that, would you expect to get any other information, do you think?
regards to the FSG call,
Yes.
I don't really. When the fire, we know when the fire engine reaches the incident. We are passing the information to the fire engine. Obviously, we know when he gets there, he's status 3. We've passed him where that person is, and we would. The only thing I can think of for what they would come back with is that they've rescued that person.
Would you ever expect to get information by way of update about how near the crews are getting to the destination?
Well, they
before
will
they get there?
Be status 2 when they are en route to that incident. I mean, certainly, if we're saying we've got someone on, we've got them on the how long do you expect to be, and they can give us an ETA. But I'm not quite sure.
No. Have you any experience of handling an FSG call in a high-rise building?
No, I think my not that I can recall.
No, I see. So have you any experience of having to having to get updates from the incident ground about how close the crews are to the FSG caller?
I don't recall getting updates like we're 2 minutes away or
right.
whatever, unless we maybe ask them.
Right.
Sorry.
Would you expect to receive an update about the outcome of an FSG call?
Yes.
Yeah. I want to turn to the night of the fire, if I can. On the night of the fire, you, I think, moved on to the role of radio operator,
Yes.
covering Channel 4.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yes.
And you were undertaking that call, I think, that role, I think, when the first call came in from Grenfell Tower.
Yes.
Who was the other operator? Or was there another radio operator in?
There was another radio operator on Channel 2.
Oh, right, on Channel 2?
Yeah.
Okay, who was that, do you know?
Sarah Russell.
Sarah Russell, okay.
Yeah.
And we know, I think, that she came on to help doing calls at some point.
That's correct. When it started to get very busy and we started to get a queue of calls, it became apparent that one of us should obviously start taking calls. That was a priority.
Right.
So I then took over both channels.
I see. So you used channels 2 and 4, did you?
Yeah.
Right, so you basically borrowed South London's radio capability.
I was the radio operator for the whole of London.
Right.
So you were effectively the radio operator for both north and south of the river,
Yes.
but you didn't use Channel 2 to handle north of the river traffic.
No, they would stick with Channel 2.
Yeah. Now, in your witness statement, if we can just go back to it, at the bottom of page 3, you explain that you completed an exercise with Christine Howson on the standby desk, I think, and then moved across to Channel 4, and you call it the busier channel, you say?
Channel 4 is the busier, yeah.
Is it just habitually the busier channel?
Yes, it has more, it covers a bigger area.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And busier than Channel 2, that's the comparison?
Generally, it usually is, yeah.
Okay. And when you moved across to the radio seat, is there a seat, a specific seat?
I was in another room doing the standbys with Christine. I was assisting her. She took the lead on that, and I was just like assisting her.
Right.
So that was in a different room in the building.
Okay.
So when I came back into the control room when that when those duties were done, I went on to Channel 4. That
Okay.
was my position for the night.
Could you just give us an idea of physically where you sit as a radio operator in the control room?
Well, we were at Stratford that night.
I mean Stratford, yes.
Yeah. So you, it's more at the back of the room. We call the supervisors the back of the room. So the opposite to the supervisors.
Right.
You have it's very difficult to explain, but so a row of the three positions here with the two radio operators and a relief
Right.
who would also take calls. And then round the room we have call takers, and then in front is the supervisors facing everybody.
Right. So you've got a clear line of sight to the supervisor?
Yeah, everybody did have really.
Right.
Yeah.
And did the supervisor have a clear line of sight to you?
Yeah.
Okay. We'll come to look at some of the individuals later on, but when you talk about the supervisor, who are you talking about on that night?
I'm talking about Officer of the Watch and the officer in charge.
Right.
So officer in charge was Alex Norman.
Alex Norman.
Officers of the Watch were Peter May and Debbie Real.
Right. And what about Jo Smith?
She is above Alex, but she came in later.
Yes.
So she wasn't on duty. She came in because of how the incident went.
Yes, BCO2. Now, on page 2 of your statement, just going back to it, in the second paragraph you say a radio operator is the essential link between the crews on the ground and the control room.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to have a look at that a little bit further. How do control room operators, people taking 999 calls, normally convey messages to you as the radio operator?
Okay. Again, we go back to that service request box.
Right.
So on the system in front of us, we have a screen with all the incidents on there. The incident that you want, you will open up a message box with the incident number in it, or you might open that incident and it will link it to it. You put your information into the message box, which is the service request, and it will say RT4, and it will say the call sign of whoever's the officer in charge. And then they usually, if it's a priority like an FSG, they will call out and say message on 4, and the radio operator. Then when they save that message, it goes into the list, and then the radio operator can see the list, and obviously there's messages on there for RT4. Open up that message and relay it to the officer in charge, or the incident command, or the radio, the fire ground.
Okay. And you say open it up and relay it to the fire ground. Is that
to whoever I'm communicating with on that incident? So when I said earlier, the pump ladder with the watch manager on it, to start.
Just focusing on what's happening inside the control room for the moment. So I think what you're saying is that CROs normally convey messages to you as the radio operator through the vision log.
Yes.
Right. And it comes up on your screen, does it? And you see it.
Yes.
And then you read what you see, or you say what you see off the screen to the incident ground by radio.
Yes.
And would CROs normally convey messages to you while still on the calls, or would they wait for the calls to finish before typing in messages?
They might put more. They might put more information on a service log, but
Right.
generally, in this case, I was just passing over. I don't remember them sort of. I mean, if it was one call, then you might sort of call across with more info as well.
Right.
But when we were getting lots of calls, it was just going on the service requests.
Okay. On the night of the fire, did it work in the way you've just described with the use of the vision log?
Yes.
Or it did it?
Yeah.
Okay. We've heard some evidence from Jason Oliff, who arrived in the control room after about 2:00 a.m. That control room officers were writing FSG information on pieces of paper and then walking them up to him.
Well, that was later on, and that was initially it was all done through the radio.
Right.
It got to a point when obviously we were taking a lot of fire survival guidance calls, and the radio is not just for passing fire survival calls, it's also the link between the fire ground and the control. So it was also the radio was taking other messages like the makeups and people getting there, etc.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just fire survival guidance. So due to later on when they'd arrived, due to the amount of calls being taken, I think the decision was made to start passing things to him because he was on the phone to the ground because it was quicker that way because of the amount of traffic obviously on the radio as well as the fire survival.
Right. We'll probably come to this later on, but was there a period of time when you were taking vision messages from control room operators and radioing them to the incident ground at the same time as Jason Olaf was sending them by mobile phone to the incident ground?
To be honest, I don't know. I don't know. That is possible.
Don't remember.
But I was so busy on the radio, and that I don't know. I think a decision was made at the point for people to start passing the pieces of paper over. So that was generally what started to happen. It might have happened gradually, but eventually that's what happened. Okay,
we'll probably come back to that. But going back to this question of communication and the use of the vision system, can I just ask a general question? Did the vision system cope on the night with the volume of messages, or were there problems with it?
The vision system did cope that night because it's a new system and we have had teething problems with it. But we were at Stratford, which is the fallback centre, and the vision, as I understand it, the server was changed. We have an A server and a B server. So A at Merton and B at Stratford.
Right.
So because the server was changed to the B server, there wasn't so much information on the B server, so it was coping with the amount of information going into it. It wasn't slowing down or anything like that. It was okay on the night. Okay.
Now, can I just see if we can illustrate what you've been telling us through some examples working with the short incident log? Mm-hmm. Can I ask you to be shown the short incident log and go to page 20? It's tab 23 of our master documents bundle. This is, I stress, an example.
Oh, yeah.
You see that at time mark of 01:55:18 on page 20. You have service request created. RT4, G271, caller in flat 95 has flames coming in window. Mm-hmm. And then we can see that that's updated at 01:55:35, just below it. Service request updated from RT4, G271, caller in flat 95 has flames coming in window, to RT4, G271, caller in flat 95, floor 12. Floor 12 has flames coming in window. So the update is floor 12. Do you see that?
Yes.
And PD is the person, is this right, creating the service request?
Yeah.
Is that Peter Duddy?
Yes.
And he's the control room operator. And so is what's happening is that he's typing the service request into Vision and sending it to you, effectively.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. And I say updated because with the floor 12 is the new information, as we can see. Mm-hmm. And then if you turn the page to 21, you can see that the service request is completed at 01:56:44, just second entry down. Service request completed RT4 to G271, caller in flat 95, floor 12, has flames coming in window. When it's completed, what is happening?
So he will pass that information. When it's completed, then I've passed the information.
By radio?
By radio.
And RT4 is radio channel 4?
Yes.
Okay. And what does the T stand for? Is that transmission?
What is, sorry?
The RT. What does RT stand for?
It just says, it's just radio traffic.
Radio traffic.
RT4 is radio transmission.
Okay.
It's M2FN, RT4, same thing.
Okay.
That's the phrase we would use.
And then finally, to complete the picture, if we look at radio transmissions at 0156, perhaps we can look at this. This is LFB *000 2057. It's not on here. I'm sorry. I just want to show you a different document. That is a radio transmission. It's a transcript of the radio transmission.
Okay.
Female speaker, flat 95, on the 12th floor, has flames coming in the window. Over. First question is, was that you?
Yes.
Okay. And we can see the message being sent to the incident ground. Now, at that stage, at 0156:23, we know that there was a command unit in place.
Okay.
And we have evidence from earlier witnesses in the inquiry who say that was, at that stage, CU8.
Okay.
Do you know who you were speaking to on CU8?
No, you don't take a name. You just call up that call sign, CU8.
Okay. And we can see the time of 0156:23. And looking back at the service, at the short incident log, we can see that at 0156:44 the service request is completed. And SAD is the initial. I'm assuming that's you.
Yes.
Yes. Does that mean that you complete the request on the short incident log or on the vision log system after you've sent the radio message that we've just looked at?
Yes.
Okay.
Can I just ask to clarify my own understanding? If you look at the service request completed,
Yes.
it has RT4 G271, which is the instant command pump,
Yeah.
whereas you actually radioed CU8.
Yeah.
No, is that the... Well, you better explain.
Sorry. I've just... all I've done is ticked that service request box, so I didn't type that information in, the call tone.
That's put in by the original CRO who creates the request.
Yes.
Right.
And from that point on, it remains as he created it.
Is it on there?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
I haven't changed it.
No, that's what I thought. Thank you.
No, that's... Can I just explore that a little bit further? If you go back then to LFB *000 2057, which is the radio message we were looking at a minute ago, you can see at the top, which I didn't take you to, and I should have done. It says event, and then there's a lot of letters and numbers. Then it says control FSG 6 to CU8. So it looks as if the system has picked up the fact that you've passed the radio message to CU8. Would you expect the recording system to record which CU you're sending the message to?
Would I expect... well, yes, yes, of course, it's taped.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, okay. To take the chairman's point a little further, does that mean that although the person who created the service request, which I think in this case it was Pete Duddy, thought that the messages were still being sent to G271 as the initial command pump, you knew that actually they should go to CU8?
That's correct.
And sent them to... Next question then. How do you remember how you found out that CU8 was was the command unit which had arrived?
Yes, I do. I know that I was calling up Golf 271 with the priority message. I don't know if it was that one, but I was calling up Golf 271 and I wasn't getting a response because obviously they were very busy. And Charlie, Uniform 8, did come up on the radio and spoke to me and said, we are just settling in, we're just settling it, setting up can you pass it over to us? And obviously, like I said earlier, command unit does take over. So from that moment, I started passing them to him.
Right. Okay. So to summarise this, does that mean that the control room officers creating messages didn't know that there's...
Well, they might not necessarily know that because it was so busy, but they do know that obviously Golf 271 is attached to that incident, and that's the important thing, is that those messages was going to the right incident.
Okay. Is there any way of amending the vision system when you mark it as service request completed to show that in fact the message was being sent to CU8 and not G271?
It's not standard practice to do that, because I mean it is taped and it does log it, so it's not standard practice. I wouldn't change a service request information.
Right. Okay.
And I could put CU8 is now, but they never. Usually they would come up and say, "Command you, CU8 is now instant command pump."
Right.
But it was so busy that might not have actually been said.
Okay.
And if they had said that, I would have typed, because I'm listening and typing at the same time, and I would have typed that in. But it was so busy. It was just a case of getting the information across to them, and you know.
Was there a way in which those on CU8 could access the vision log and themselves type in as a information message or something to say, please pass all messages to CU8?
Well, I don't know what they have on the command unit. I've never seen what they are using, so I don't know the answer to that.
Right.
But like I say, it is taped, and it's starting to get logged that it's CU8.
Okay. Just going back to being told about setting up, if I could just ask you to be shown LFB quadruple 03078. Oh, 3078, I'm so sorry. Three 3078. That should produce something of interest. Right. We'll perhaps come back to that. Can I just explore another example with you? But if you can't remember anything about it, then say so and I'll stop. I'm going to ask you about flat 111 on the 14th floor. Are you okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, there were 2 service requests, and we know information about it was passed via what we understand is called an admin line call. Are you familiar with admin line calls?
Yeah.
Okay. If you go, first of all, to page 61 of the ORR, and I should just tell you what the ORR is. It's a report put together at the end of May for the, I'll say for the inquiry, by the LFB, and they've shared it with the inquiry and everybody else, which is a timeline of the first hour of the fire with some detail in it. And at page 61, there's a table at the bottom of the page, and you can see in the table that one of the flats listed, the second one down, is flat number 111. And I just should stress for everybody in the room that is an example only I'm using this for. And we can see from the table that the call was received into the control room at 1:25:16 in relation to flat 111 on the 14th floor, saying they're trapped by smoke. Do you see that? Okay. Now, we know from a document I'm going to show you that at 1:35:24, so 10 minutes or so later, Alex Norman sent details about this flat to CU8. And can I just ask the witness to be shown INQ quintuple 0194. and that is timed at 01:35:24, as you can see from the middle of the event information at the top. And if you turn to the next page, if Mr. Documents Director can turn to the next page, near the bottom of the page, you can see that Alex Norman, and we've been told it's Alex Norman by Joe Smith, who told us this, that she says, control says, right, I've got flat 111, and CU8 says 111, which is on the 14th floor. And then if you go to the next page, the 14th floor is repeated at the top there. My first question is, having shown you the receipt of the call at 1:25 and the message to CU8 at 1:35 by Alex Norman, my first question is, did you know that Alex Norman was contacting the CU on the incident ground?
No.
No.
But that might be part of her role. I mean, she was the officer in charge.
Okay.
But
no. She didn't tell you, did she, that she was contacting?
No, she wouldn't have.
Right. Did you see her on a phone passing messages to CU8 or to the incident ground?
No, I don't recall.
Okay. Now it looks, if you go back to the short incident log, please, and look at page 19, that at the time mark of 01:43:58, CH makes a service request. RT4 G271, flat 111, 14th floor, trapped in bathroom, smoke coming in. CH is, I think, Christine Howson. I've worked that out. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you know, can you help me with how Christine Howson would have got that information?
Well, the caller may have rung back.
Right. Okay.
And then spoken to Christine.
And then if you look at 01:44:56, you can see SAD, which is you, service request completed, RT4 to G271, and you repeat the message.
Yeah.
And I know this is an example, but did you know that at that stage in the evening you were passing radio messages in relation to, for fire survival guidance calls, in relation to the same flats that Alex Norman was passing messages to via admin line?
I didn't know that.
No. Does it surprise you to find out?
To be honest, I don't think it really matters. I think the fact that they were getting the information is, even if they've got it once or twice, that's the important thing.
Right. Do you know, or can you explain why the radio message that I've just shown you was sent something like 8 minutes after Alex Norman's call to CU8?
Well, the call that Christine spoke to, she made that request at 1:43, so that would assume that maybe the caller's run back and spoken and got Christine, and then I've passed it over straight away. Right.
Okay. There's then a second service request for the same flat at 1:51:13. If you go to page 20 of the short incident log, 1:51:13, service request, and this is HJF this time, which I think I've worked out is Heidi Fox. Is that right?
Heidi, yeah.
Heidi. And she makes a service request, RT4 to G271, info received from SRY police caller. Is that Surrey?
Yes.
Caller in flat 111 on the 14th floor is in the bathroom area with smoke entering room. He is having difficulties breathing.
Yeah.
And that service request was completed at 01:54:05. If you look just a little bit further down the page, by SAD, that's you. Mm-hmm. Again, can you explain why there was a further service request in relation to this FSG caller?
Well, again, the caller has run back or spoken to Surrey Police, has rung 999 and probably couldn't get through to us and was diverted to Surrey Police.
Right.
And Heidi's got that information from the police and sent it on a service request. So I mean, I think callers were ringing back and speaking to different people in the control room, but he wouldn't necessarily collate all that he wouldn't pick up that maybe the same caller was ringing back. Several people could have spoken to that same caller. And it would still be the information they were getting, because it's an update as well of smoke. He's now having difficulties breathing, so all the information would still be passed.
Right.
I mean, Heidi wouldn't have known maybe that Christine had spoken to that caller.
If you had known that Alex Norman had already passed a message about this flat to Command Unit 8, do you think you would have still have sent this radio transmission?
I was just sending all service request messages.
Okay.
I wasn't thinking if anyone else has sent it. I was just sending what was being sent to me.
Right. Can I just turn to the radio messages then that were sent?
Can I just ask a question? If a service request is created on the vision system
Yes.
and not actioned, does the system throw out an alarm of some sort?
I don't think it does with a service request, but if it's not actioned, it will just sit there until someone actually completes it.
Right. Right, thank you.
Okay. Can I just show you one or two radio messages? First of all, LFB quadruple 02305. And this is operator to Charlie Uniform. Or rather, do you know whether that's an incoming message or an outgoing message? It starts operator Charlie Uniform 8, go ahead, over.
Charlie Uniform 8, we're being advised. So that's from me to Charlie.
Right.
I think that's from me to Charlie Uniform 8.
Yes. I've assumed that operator is you, but so you're calling Charlie Uniform 8, and then...
Hang on a minute, Charlie Uniform 8.
I think maybe the other way round.
That's a bit confusing. I think I'm calling up Charlie Uniform 8.
Okay.
And obviously sending over that information.
And then, I think you can see the information. We're being advised that people on the 10th floor are asking to leave their flats. Are you able to go and check them? So that's presumably you speaking to CU8.
Yeah.
I'm just putting that to you because it just seems obvious.
I wasn't waiting for an answer. I was just saying, can you go and check them?
And then you say, traffic, we've got information info received from Surrey Police. Caller on the 14th floor in flat 111 is in the bathroom with smoke entering the room and he's having difficulties breathing. Over. Looking back at the short incident log, at 015405, page 20, I've shown you this before. Now you've got the service request completed, and you've got the radio message. When you sent the message, were you essentially reading the service request in progress at 015352, aloud down the phone to CU8?
Oh, I see. It's
my fault. I've confused you.
Yeah.
I've shown you the radio message.
The one in progress means that I've seen that message and I might be trying to raise them. The one which says completed is I have now passed that information.
Yes, I see. Yes. And then at LFB quadruple 02324, we've got a message at 015331. And this is, as you can see, timed at 015331 from the event configuration at the top. Operator, okay, that was flat 111. Can you confirm what floor that's on? Caller 14. And again, is that CU8 asking you the question and you responding?
Yes, he's asking me, can I confirm the floor?
Yes. And having shown you that, does that mean, can we get from that when you speak to CU8 by radio in relation to an FSG call, you are essentially reading off to CU8 what you've got on your vision log in front of you?
Yes.
Right. Ms. Darby, I'm just noticing the time. I've been reminded of the time.
I'm okay for another...
Would you like a break, or would you want to...
I'm okay for 10, 15 minutes.
Well, let's just see where Mr. Millett's going for the rest of the afternoon. Mr. Millett, you've got a few more questions, I suspect.
I do. Yes, I do. I do. But we can carry on for
yes, but if you think that you may need to go on until 4:15 or even 4:30, the witness might prefer to have a break at this point. I don't know.
I'll take advice from yourself.
I think, why don't we take a break now?
Well, can I just ask you, are you content, subject to any other developments, to go on until, let's say, 4:30?
Of course, yeah.
Right. Well, in that case, I think it would be in everyone's interest to have a short break now, just 5 minutes or so. And then Mr. Millett can feel free to use the afternoon.
Yeah. Well, I ought just to be candid with the chair and the witness. I am not going to finish my questions of the witness this afternoon, no. I'm afraid. It's not great news for you, Ms. Darby, I'm afraid, and I'm sorry about that.
But the more questions we have today, the fewer there should be tomorrow. I say should, because you never know, of course.
That's the theory. I'm so sorry about that.
We'll have a break now until 5 to 4. So don't talk to anyone about your evidence, please. If you'd like to go to the usher now, then have a short time out. All right? And we'll resume at 5 to 4 then, please.
they could request either a make-up of appliances or request other resources. The message is then processed through Vision and picked up by another CRO who will action it and allocate the required resources. Do you have any part to play in that exercise as a radio operator?
As the radio operator, you take the message from the incident commander, and it might be saying, for example, make pumps 6.
Right.
So I'm listening to him, I'm typing in, I'm opening a service request, typing in that make pump 6, and then when I save that service request, I will shout out to the room so they all know that there is an urgent message coming out, and I will shout out make pump 6, and they will then, that service request will go back into that list again, and one of the control officers will pick it up and do the actions required.
Okay. Do you shout out all messages that come from the incident ground, or only those that relate to resources?
Anything urgent, like, for example, definitely make-ups, we always shout out.
Yeah.
Maybe if it's an ambulance, we would shout out for there's an ambulance request.
Why do you shout it out?
If it's urgent, so that it brings the attention to the people that are in the room, and they know that they've got to deal with that quickly.
Right. And on the night, did you do that, shouting out for all 999 calls or FSG messages that came in, so that control room would know about?
Well, I didn't get FSG messages from the ground. I got make-ups from the crews.
Right.
And yes, I would shout out. I shouted out all the make-ups.
Okay. So you say you didn't get FSG messages from the ground. That's right.
Well, we're doing the FSG, aren't we? So we're passing the FSG information to them, and they're receiving the information.
Yeah. Did you get any feedback or communication back from the incident ground about FSG messages?
No.
Was that at any stage during the night of the Grenfell Tower fire?
Not about rescues or anything like that.
Now, if all radio messages are logged onto Vision, as we've seen, does that mean that all the other CROs in the room can see them?
They can. They have to go through the log, and it can get quite long.
Oh, you've got to scroll, have you?
You've got to scroll,
I see. Does that mean that when they are speaking to a caller, they know or can see that a message has been sent to the fireground?
Yeah. What you mean while they're on the line to them?
Yes.
If they might shout out RT4 message.
Well,
I will pick it up and send it. They'll know when I've completed it that it's been sent.
Yes. I mean, to take an example, I showed you the messages created and completed in relation to flat 111.
Yeah.
If flat 111 called back into the control room and got another control room operator, for example.
They're not going to scroll through all the messages because they won't have time to do that.
Right, but could they do that?
Well, I suppose they could, but we wouldn't have had time to look through all the messages like that. There were like priority calls, emergency calls waiting, and it got to the point of we didn't have time to scroll through and see who's already called. It's time, just pick up the calls and get the information that you're taking across.
If a caller asked a control room operator, are the crews on their way, would the control room operator be able to answer the question by scrolling up and looking at the Vision log and seeing the message completed?
Message completed will mean that I've passed that information to the crew. That the control room operator, the control officer, will know that the crews are there or on their way, because it shows on the incident all the appliances that are assigned to that incident, and they change colour as to when they're on their way, and they change colour to red when they actually are in attendance, so they can see when people are, they'll know if the fire engines are in attendance there.
Right. But to be able to answer the question to a fire survival guidance caller, are the crews on their way up to me? in this high-rise, where are they? Would a control room operator be able to get that information?
When it's multiple calls like that, we're obviously saying to them that we are going to pass the information to the ground and we'll make sure they get the information of where you are.
Right. So is this right? Does it follow that all that a control room operator would be able to do is either to resend the message to the fireground via you on the radio, or perhaps an admin line call from the telephone, or tell the caller that a message has been sent?
Yeah, we'll let the crews know where you are.
Right. But does it follow from that that the control room operator wouldn't be able to get information from the incident ground, to be able to say to the caller, they are 2 floors below you and on their way up? Would officers on the incident command pump or the command unit have access to the vision log to be able to see what radio messages were being sent?
I don't know what they have access to.
Now, at the bottom of page 4 of your statement, you say, I remember thinking that although we were passing a lot of information to the ground crews, it was taking time to receive informative messages back. An informative message keeps us informed of the situation on the ground and gives us detail about the fire. And then you go on to say, well, let me just pause there. You say it was taking time to receive informative messages. Did that cause you difficulties?
No, because the priority was the fire survival guidance calls.
Okay.
So the informative message, I think they sent one when it was Mate Pump 6, and then obviously, but then the informative message, the next one came a lot later, but that was because the radio really, the priority was getting the fire survival information across to them, and the make-ups. That was another priority because they needed to get the resources down there as quick as possible.
So the messages you're talking about here are resourcing messages, and an informative message.
The informative message that the crew will send, i.e. what's, a building of how many floors, and that sort of message, that came much later because the radio was very busy dealing with passing the fire survival guidance. They were taking all that information, and also they were having to make the incident up, and it was going up very quickly. So the information coming back to the radio and to the control room went up to like Mate Pumps 40 in the end. So that was taking over that. Right.
At the top of just continuing on that theme, at the top of page 5 of your statement, you say, however, the crews were very good at responding to the FSG messages and relaying make-up messages back to us.
Yeah.
Now, you've told us about relaying make-up messages.
Yeah.
I just want to look at where you say the crews were very good at responding to the FSG messages. What do you mean when you say that they were good at?
What I mean is that I was able to call them up, and I was able to get hold of them quickly to pass the information, so that when I say they were good at responding, they were good at responding to the chat to me, for me to pass. There wasn't much of a delay. I was able to pass things fairly quickly.
Okay, but yes, and I think you've told us that at no stage were you told of the progress of any particular fire survival guidance call yourself.
Sorry, I didn't hear.
I think you said that at no stage were you told of the progress of any individual fire survival guidance call yourself. Is that right?
No, not via the radio, no.
In any other way, do you think?
No, I don't know. Not from me.
Did you or anybody else in the control room, to your knowledge, try throughout the night to get any further information from the incident ground about the progress of rescues or
Well, I think Alex Norman was trying to get more information.
She was she?
Yeah,
Did you see her or hear her trying to do that?
Well, it was a long time ago, so actually hearing conversations and things, but I know that maybe subsequent, but I do know that she was trying to get that information.
Do you know how successful she was?
No, but obviously when Jason Oliff and Adrian Fenton came in, she was probably trying to get them to get that information as well.
Right. Did the fact that you weren't, and I'm really asking you for your perspective, did the fact that you weren't getting any information back from the incident ground about the progress of fire survival guidance calls or rescues, did that hamper you in your ability to assist fire survival guidance callers or assist operators to assist those callers?
I wouldn't say it hampered. I wasn't taking calls, so I don't know from their point of view.
Do you know whether the absence of that information hampered control room operators in giving advice to callers?
I don't know. Well, it was just so busy. They were just trying to just get through it. Take.
At the top of page 5 of your statement, which we've just been looking at, you say, for a long time all we knew officially was that there was a fire on the 4th floor, but we had no idea how it was getting bigger and bigger, only that more pumps were needed. When you say officially, does that mean that there was some unofficial knowledge that you also had?
No. We would just... I guess we were guessing by the fact that they were making it up. Obviously, there was more going on than the fire on the 4th floor, but that's all we knew. We didn't know how or what was happening.
No.
But obviously, we knew it was getting bigger because they were making it up.
Yes. Does that mean that you didn't know about what was actually a light on the building?
No.
Does that mean that you didn't know about the speed of fire spread?
Well, we knew it's difficult. We knew that it was being made up very quickly. I mean, when it gets to like 10, 15, 20, you know that it's a big fire and it's getting serious. But originally, all we knew was that we'd been caught in the fire on the 4th floor, and obviously, because that didn't really change, we didn't really know what was going on from that for a while.
Did you think that more information from the incident ground about the fire itself would have helped you or helped other control room operators advise callers?
Well, yes, it would have helped.
In what way?
Well, we could have... If we'd have known the fire was maybe spreading, it's very difficult for me to answer that question. I wasn't taking calls.
No,
I wasn't in that role, but obviously it probably would have helped Alex as well if she'd have known a bit more what was going on.
If you turn to page 6 of your statement, just jumping ahead for a moment, at the top of that page you say this: there were no TVs on Stratford and I did not see anything relating to the fire until about 5 a.m. when it started to get much quieter in the control room. I think it may be, again, a language thing. When you say there were no TVs on Stratford, do you mean there that there were no TVs at Stratford?
No, sorry, the TV wasn't switched on.
It was switched off,
yeah.
Okay. Do you know why it was switched off?
It didn't even occur to me, to be honest.
Right.
It wasn't on at the beginning of the night, and it didn't occur to me
Right.
that it should be on or anything.
Okay. And then you say in the next sentence, we had purely been reliant on the crews to update us on what was happening.
Yeah.
But on what you've told us already this afternoon, I think you told us that, in fact, you didn't get any information back from the crews.
No, not until a lot later.
No.
We didn't know what was... We can only go by what...
And you say in the next sentence, I remember Googling the fire and thought to myself, oh my God, we've been telling people to stay put in that.
Yeah, it's very clumsily written. I didn't say this word for word. This has been dictated and taken down. But
what's your recollection?
It was a shock. But by the time that we actually started to see images, it was a lot. It was like 5, 6 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
And some of us started to sort of look it up on the news, and it was a shock. What we were seeing.
Do you remember what, we'll come to it, but do you remember what time the stay put advice was changed?
I have no idea.
You don't?
I don't. I do remember Joanne Smith going around the room and telling people to change the advice, but I don't really know what time that was.
Right, okay.
It probably was after the Make Pumps faulty major incident.
Yes. Okay. But did you realise when, by 5 a.m., in fact, the stay put advice had been changed some hours before?
Oh, yeah, yes, I knew that. It had changed, yes.
So when you say we've been telling people to stay put in that?
Well, like I say, that's worded very clumsily.
Okay, all right. Do you think that if you'd seen images earlier, that would have affected the advice that... This is not a fair question because you weren't giving advice. I'll move to the next point, or next topic if I can, which is the first FSG information. Do you remember, off the top of your head, from your recollection, when the first FSG calls started to come in?
No, I can't remember a timeline. Might have been after Make Pump 6, I'm not entirely certain.
Right. Now you say on page 4 of your statement, about a third of the way down, after the reference to Make Pumps 15 and straight up to 25, you say that's 25 fire engines at one scene. It was obvious then that this was really bad and very rare. Suddenly there was an influx of calls that began to come into the control room from residents.
Okay, so it's 20 Make Pumps 25. Like I said, it did go up very, very quickly.
Yes, yes. Well, we have Make Pumps 25 at 0131 or so. Do you remember which appliance you radioed with the first of the FSG calls?
Golf 271.
It was 271, right. Do you remember if you had any success in speaking with anybody at G271 when you first called them?
Yes, it was Golf 271 or Golf 272, but certainly was able to get them initially.
Okay, you could. Do you remember who you spoke to?
No, because you don't get a name. You just go on the call sign. But the messages were initially coming from Watchman Edward Dowden, so he was in charge. Right.
And do you remember that there came a time when you could get no reply from G271?
Yeah.
And what did you do? Do you remember?
Yeah, I believe there was a couple of times that happened, and another appliance who had just got in attendance, I can't remember, it was Golf 361 possibly, came up on the radio. I kept trying, kept saying priority, and he came up and said, "We've just got here, do you want to give the information to us?"
Right.
Which I did, and he said, "We'll pass it straight to the incident commander."
Okay. And we have record of Acton's pump ladder G261 intercepting the FSG information. Is that's in accordance with your recollection, is it?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, on page 4 of your statement, at the top, you say that I was aware of the message to Make Pumps 4. This is right at the very start.
Yeah.
If we look at the short incident log at page 17, which is where it starts, the incident starts at 005:59 and 12 seconds.
So it wasn't Make Pump 4. It might have been Make Pump 6.
Right.
But in my statement, I didn't remember it correctly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. My question is we can't actually see that make-up message on the short incident log.
Then they wouldn't have been said.
Right. Do you know the background to the incident being made up to 4 pumps?
No. I only know that the high-rise was put on it, the attendance. Right. That's all I know.
Okay.
If they didn't say to me Make Pumps 4, then that didn't happen. It would be on. I would have typed everything they said into the log, so it would be on there.
Right. It's only that you say, I was aware of the message to make pumps 4.
Well, I've remembered it incorrectly. It's 6.
I see, okay. And then on page 4, a little bit lower down, you describe at the end of that paragraph, I'm going to show you a sentence. It says, I'm so sorry, 3 lines up, it says, I recall from there, it was declared a major incident.
Yeah.
There is a procedure for things to be declared a major incident. It would be declared the officer in charge of the scene. The resulting procedure in the control room is then dealt with through the supervisors.
Yeah.
My question is, what is the procedure in the control room that is dealt with through the supervisors?
Well, I'm not a supervisor, so I don't actually know that.
You don't know the procedure?
I do remember shouting out that this is a major incident, and Alex obviously and Alex, Debbie and Peter would have done the action,
right,
what they needed to do for that. But I wouldn't have had any involvement in that.
Do you know what practical difference the incident being declared a major incident made to your operations in the control room?
Well, it was a 40 by then anyway, so it was... No. I don't know. I don't deal with that when it gets that far.
Do you remember whether sorry, I should ask you, are you familiar with something called a methane message?
No.
Have you ever heard of a methane message?
No.
Do you recall being asked to put a methane message out?
No.
Okay. Do you know, or did you know, that the police had declared a major incident or critical incident at 1:26 and a major incident at 1:32?
I don't recall that.
No. Do you remember whether the police contacted the control room to tell you that a major incident had been declared?
They would speak to the supervisors about it.
Okay. If I can turn to page 5 of your statement and ask you to look at the second paragraph. 2 lines down, you say, I cannot really remember the names of the senior officers present, but I think they started to come in at around the 15 pump mark. Now, we know from looking at the short incident log, and I'll show this to you if you like, it's page 17, that the incident was made 15 pumps at 0:28:09. Where you can see make up IUP G271, make pumps 15, make aerials ×2, and it's got your initials next to the radio message. When we see that, that's you, is it, recording in the vision log that you've had a radio message from the incident ground for a make-up?
That's correct.
As you told us. And that time, 0:28:09, is make pumps 15.
Correct.
In terms of the senior officers, are you able to give us some names, do you think?
Of
who it was who were coming in?
Well, I didn't know, I didn't really know them at the time. I know who they are now.
Right.
But at the time I didn't really know.
Okay. We have just some timings. We've got the first of the senior officers coming in as Jason Oliff, who arrives at between 1:50 and 1:55 or so. It's not exactly clear.
Okay.
And that's what he told us, which is sometime after pumps were made 15. In fact, it's after pumps were made 25.
Okay. But he's got to, he would be paged.
Yes.
And he's got to get there. So
Yes.
that might be the delay, obviously.
So-
He'd be
certainly.
paged at that
Yeah.
point and he's got to proceed to the control room.
Yes. It's really just a timing question, because you say you think they started to come in at around the 15 pump mark, but in fact the pumps were made 25 at 01:31, and Oliff comes in at 1:50 to 1:55.
Okay.
So do you think that in fact the 15 pump mark is right?
Not necessarily, not necessarily.
Okay.
Like I say, a lot of that was more a supervisory role
Yes.
with with when they come in.
Do you happen to remember who the first senior officer was who came into the control room?
I know now. It was, I think it was Mr. Olive.
It was Olive. It was Jason Olive,
Yeah,
wasn't it?
Jason.
All right. Now, 3/4 of the way down page 5, you say, and I'm just trying to link it to a time point. When we'd gone to 40 pumps, this is 5 lines down, they took over the communication with the command unit on the ground and passed on the FSGs directly to them. I think they used mobile phones to do this.
Yeah.
And then a few lines on from that, because you describe what they do, you say, my role then became one of liaising with the crews about specific resources that were required, such as extra breathing apparatus, BA or further fire and rescue units, FRUs,
Yeah.
etc.
Yeah.
Does that happen as soon as Jason Olive comes in and starts speaking on the mobile to the command unit, or did it happen later?
It might not have happened straight away. I don't know when the decision was made for people to start passing him the messages. So it might have taken a little while, and it might have overlapped.
Okay.
I'm not sure of the times.
Let's just take this in stages then. Can I then move to a similar topic, but a slightly different topic?
Mr. Millett, do you think it's sensible to go to a new topic now? Well, when you've perfectly understandably said that you're going to need this witness to come back tomorrow.
I would like not to have to do so for her sake, but I'm afraid I do have about another hours questions, 45 minutes questions.
Well, I'm sure she'd prefer not to come back tomorrow.
I'm sure
but
she would.
I don't think any of us would be wise to sit here for another hour.
No, I'm not going to ask you to do that. So perhaps the best thing to do would be to pause now and me to ask.
Well, it just seemed if you're going to move to something that's
yes.
different and self-contained, it would be better to stop.
Well, it's slightly different, but not completely. What I want to talk about is the whiteboard system and the question of overlapping.
Well,
possibly overlapping.
I think that would be something we could start tomorrow without too much discontinuity, isn't it?
Yes. Yes. Miss Darby, I'm sorry to ask you to do this, and I hope it's not inconvenient to you, but is it possible that you might be able to come back for an hour in the morning and assist us? And I'm sorry, it's been very helpful.
I'll ask the next question before Mr. Millett prompts me. Would it be inconvenient for you to be back here at 9:30 tomorrow morning?
No, not at all.
No, will that be all right?
That's fine.
Well, I suppose, Mr. Millett, that would be the sensible thing to do.
So that's a consent application? Yes, it would be. I'd be very grateful. Thank you.
Well, I think it'd be in everyone's interest if we break at this point. As Mr. Millett said, I'm sorry, we are going to have to ask you to come back tomorrow. I hope for only an hour or so. Can't guarantee it, I'm afraid. So, if you would please, back at 9:30, and don't talk to anyone about your evidence overnight. Is that all right?
Yes, of course.
All right. Thank you very much indeed. Look forward to seeing you tomorrow. If you'd like to go with the usher, she'll look after you. Thank you. Mr. Millett, I thought we'd better be prepared for an earlier start. We've got two witnesses in the list for tomorrow, haven't we?
Yes, I'm joking apart. I'm genuinely grateful. We have. We've got firefighter Beale and crew manager Batcheldor.
Yeah.
I haven't spoken to Mr. Kinnear at any length about how long he anticipates being with firefighter Beale, but I don't think it'll be that long, and I will cut my cloth accordingly with crew manager Batcheldor.
It would obviously be very, very unsatisfactory for Mr. Batcheldor to be part heard tomorrow.
Indeed.
So could you just try to make sure that he isn't?
Yes.
And I think we can assume that you can have the full day.
Yes.
But no more.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I've got them.
Is that all right?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I have them. have a point.
Thank you very much. We'll resume
Right.
then at 9:30 tomorrow, please.
Very
Thank you
good.
very much.